like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that we are gathered on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'd also like to acknowledge that we've been doing land acknowledgements for decades. They're very important. They're also not nearly enough. I could list for you some of the active territorial disputes. I could explain to you why these lands are unceded and we are here illegally, even by the standards of the Crown. But I think you know that. My name's Kay. I'm very, very pleased to be able to introduce, I'm going to put this drink down. I introduce both Danielle and Anna at this launch tonight, and I am not beyond scolding you, by the way. This is a book launch for two very important books. And the point of the book launch is for you to come and buy books. I'll leave that with you as well. The books are Participation by Anna Moschovakis, published by Book Hug and Coffee House Press. This book was born somewhere between a fear of the essay form and an inchoate understanding of the term detranslation. It's a precarious novel about love and comradeship, about the comforts of desire, forms and functions of labor, and the embodied experience of reading and being read. The novel probes what it is to think about work and capitalism and desire, and anger and freedom and care. My goodness, those things go together so well. It offers an anti-guide for the current moment. It is full of mediators, translators, analysts, and those who are suspicious of them as they are of themselves. It's trying as hard as it can. The other book is Post-Dildo by Danielle LaFrance, which I feel a connection to because they're for some of the formative talks and readings. It emerged as some space for Danielle to air her dildos, which is important. After a carnal encounter with garbage, they think and write through the limitless and limitations of sexuality, communication, and desire, focusing on the dildo as sexual object and social relation. LaFrance asks, how shall you fuck without causing harm? What came before post-dildo, if not internet porn, the confession booth, colonial capitalism, settler sexuality, patriarchy, and feminism, all providing a blueprint for how inadequately to be touched and fucked? What comes after delights? Post-dildo is a mass of contradictions that more often than not finds a lot of displeasure, dis/pleasure, in a lot of refusal. So the order of events is going to be, I will introduce Danielle. Danielle will read. I will introduce Anna. Anna will read. After that, we'll just have some mingling and buying of the books. Right. It's my pleasure to introduce first Danielle LaFrance, a writer, researcher, and philosopher. She authors the poetry book, often accompanied by an essay form, Post-Dildo, Just Like I Like It, which was from Talonbooks in 2019, Friendly Plus Fire, Talonbooks 2016, and Species Branding, Cap University, 2010. Other poetry and critical writing have appeared in such magazines and journals as ASAP Journal, Capilano Review, Lest, Tripwire, and Organism for Poetic Research. They collaborated on a co-reading and journal-making endeavor about a bicycle with Anahita Jamali-Rad, and currently on an intertextual sound project, Yes, Sido, with Josh Rose. Please welcome Danielle.
Check off my face. Oh man, okay, while you were reading, I actually forgot I had to read. I want to thank you for hosting tonight. When Post Dildo was a reading group, during the second session, you know, we're reading Pat Lowther's poetry and Preciado, a bunch of work that would help us reassess what knowledge or whose knowledge we were coming into, relying on to shape our worlds, our scripts. And I remember Kay in particular had this line that I latched onto about how the apex of our production, that being economically in terms of recognition and honor, is the male genius. And if we don't do something about that, we're cooked. We might not be able to do that much more about the immediate results of inequity. So you know, there's this book, but Post Dildo has been a project, a lifestyle choice. It's been a hashtag that some of you follow. It's been a garbage tag, that's its origin roots. And it's also been a good conversation with a lot of you in this room. And I hope I get to continue receiving phallic monstrosities asking me, is this Post Dildo? I really hope that never ends. You know what to do with that. Post Dildo, like I said, it's a project. It's not just this book. This book is really the project's residue. It's been a tool to think through the messiness of relations. It's talking about the heat of Me Too during 2017, which really rocked a lot of our cultural milieus, poetry land not excluded from that. It's very much a way, it's been a tool for me to sit in the muddled middle being a concept from Lee Edelman and Lauren Berlant. And my muddled middle is looking at how fantasies shape ideology, how ideology shapes fantasy. Post Dildo is about after delights. Sex is fucking messy, it's disordered, and so is good conversation. So I'm reading tonight Anna, and I am so grateful for our connection. We know each other through Instagram. Really know each other through, yeah. And big thanks to Massy Art Society, to Gloria in the back, who really did a lot of work to compile an interview that Hariel Lurie instigated. It was a flurry of writing and thinking over the last, really not even a week. So both check that out and don't read it. cognitive fucking. For really my oldest friend I've known since I was 5, Alexis Baker. If I were a dildo, you would reconcile childhood memories with an adult fantasy, replace you plus I with figures from funereal scenes, opening casket pleasures. Remorse provides you plus I with a basis for recourse. Dangle a decapitated cabbage in celebration of a new I plus a new you. A dildo has arrived, independent of adult hangups. A dildo does not bear responsibility for dildo failures. In practice, a dildo demands you can succeed by urinating all over a golf course pre-game play, squirrel an opportunity pursuant a full-time pee pad. Like a virgin, but rather torched for the very first time, bucking ash satisfies depending on a type of vessel. Ceramic, wood, acrylic never fit so tight when decorated with centerfolds picturing Insta models, famed killers. A perfectly preserved, noisome ideology rises from a puckered neck, blown ass. I fuck you with an hourglass so you have somewhere to point to when it's over. Like Frederick Jameson, but rather cognitive mapping, stirring of a radically old call. Even a firing squad isn't so bloody adaptable, carried out either standing or collapsed. You plus I now have an opportunity to pursue full-time hobbies like necromantic, but rather jars containing human body parts, plastic bags of animal farts, smells of Cyrolaugh's first time, you plus I drift, plus emerge from a golden garbage bag in a partially decayed state. You plus I are farting animals with pathological conditions, reason enough for speaking and declaratives. You plus I go there because you and I got there. You're also totally allowed to laugh. Sometimes these things are very serious and nobody laughs. You do all the stuff. You know, sometimes you want Army Hammer to eat you. Irresponsible children. When you plus I write this more seriously, you plus I resurrect a memory. You plus I are cynical psychos misleading a reader as a Pied Piper would do for children. For you plus I, writing this is about losing everything a little more than usual. Banana flambe dreams, there should be no possession in this writing. And yet, an accurate metaphor, band-aids and allegories, grated appetite, there should be no killing in this writing. This plus yet, when I imagined you were killing while manufacturing an easy pun to come all over, writing this like a political ritual against childbirth, violence everywhere, plus not a drop to tender force, edit gently as per a new intimidation. 5 years ago, it was all a rage. Plus now gratuitous trauma poems shield white women from their own violences. It, not even a story for I to double. Psycho Hosby's flash fry in order to squat out more obedient bitches. I chose child-free, plus became hard on choices in relation to carnality. This is commitment plus concern writing, but during these exchanges, who has more power when layering a riverbed? An undetected rapist. No shadow self can clear plus eliminate the old ideas of the past. No, not that idea, that one, the one that did not work a third time. Lock those ideas in a closet for 7 minutes of coven. Shame on time, all intelligence, compounded into a single perception that grasps a single will to act. Denounce cuff season's vulgar moral standards. In a closet, I plus an undetected rapist, the fit so cocky, hate noxious assemblies condemned by a melting clock. You plus an undetected rapist at a rally 1 week prior to whose ovulation? Blood prick, mainline, love. You plus I pining for red flags weakened by Tasso's serpent, dragging after itself, wholly ashamed of its tragically painful impotence. I denounce all those mechanisms until you laugh as a form of coping. I assert freedom, like an undetected rapist existentializes his burnt toast. I am a final boss, getting off to a nasty, nasty bitch. There is nothing to be ashamed of. I hate shame, like I hate sliding into a vulgar sewer where every idea detangles drain hair. Nothing so absurd as to be further seized after delights. And I really do request you all Purple Fantasy Room number 3. Fantasy, if any of you had a Nancy Friday book in their parents' side drawer in a bathroom, this one's for you. Fantasy has everything to do with reality. With reality, not a lot happens, just an endless supply of fraternal fucking. Fantasy need not have anything to do with reality, but it does have everything to do with insinuated projections. As in, what is not happening is happening for erotomaniacs. I was instructed to wait for 5 seconds before supining. Yes, don't just stand there, force. Sometimes someone degrades enough to untether a father figure. I really don't mind. I really don't mind, now I'm gonna read for you. I really don't mind adding charms or even a simple soap squeeze in preparation for disembowelment, fiat, hot ass, like in a movie, suggesting these tits taste of days-old cantaloupe, camel toe, engagement, annexes, resistant threads that contradict reality so as to live cruelly. Nothing bears anymore, so you plus I moan, snort pooled resources as readily as naked communication is no longer tailored genius. What is to become of all this trash position? Financing a good life is empty at best if it doesn't dress to kill. Negativity, unsnap, stability, spaghetti straps. I've got some coworkers in the room, and I know this is tape, but I'm going to say it anyway. We were told we couldn't wear spaghetti straps a number of years ago until some of us made a stink. Intercepts a moan. You plus I profane promises, communicate to overcome these contumacious partitions, cradle or creases in this age of vexations. Woof for reality. Woof. Meow for fantasy. You plus I cruelly optimize refused heraldry. Clenched, embarrassed knees, woof out erosive logic on toast so that you plus I may twist these wares, make out to intelligence, ripping audibly. I just feel like stopping. This one is called The People Shtick. And I just want to give a big shout out to my sweetheart in the back, Josh Rose, who not only read this poem, but I allowed to penetrate it with his own puns. And that's all I'm going to say about it. No, Danielle, that's all I'm going to say about it. The People Shtick. Let's just say there was an acid trip and I couldn't discern between Bakunin and Bakhtin, and I kind of lost it for a second. If I were a dildo, you would be able to differentiate between Bakunin plus Bakhtin with ease while peaking acidically. Like how you can with a Keaton plus a Clooney. No, I am Batman. Plus, I want you to tell all your friends about me. Being expelled by a Marxist is reminiscent of a certain white relational aesthetic akin to farm poetry. I find selfhood while waxing split hairs over some gravitational pull towards the sun plus moon, while you are ready to live over a problem with speech genres. I want to be gunmetal gray, not seafoam green, like an artifact of old prejudices swung too far right. You want to be a gin-soaked tampon, an artifact of a bachelorette party rung left. You want to orchestrate a morning show destined for interpersonal subterfuge after a macro drop, depth dispersed after a micro drip. You plus I aim for uncivil suffrage. I find myself writing to you that Sotos's plus Celine's games are too fucking distinct, plus how I could always spot a difference between a two quite like a Lee plus a Lugosi. No, I am Dracula, plus I want you to listen to them, a children of a night. I wouldn't admit to you now, but I did then, how one stuttered while another caressed fascistic waist. This one's called Nasty, Nasty Leaks. There's a refrain throughout this poem. A dildo is a tool like any other. So the reading group that Kane mentioned was a part of, people came out in a lot of different ways. They showed up in person, and sometimes they would write responses to the text and send them to me. Some of the things that we were reading, Amros comrade, Roger Farr, was thinking about pulling some references from Heidegger, who talks about how a tool becomes equipment when it comes into existence with the things that it's referencing. So Heidegger uses the hammer, and it isn't a hammer until it comes into contact with nails and wood. So we're bringing this into the logic of the dildo. How does a dildo become a dildo, especially when everything can become a dildo if you're brave enough. Nasty, nasty leaks. A dildo is a tool like any other, plus owes its existence to other things. Two hollow bronze phallus-shaped objects were excavated from an elite's grave, made for new use values, plus worn as strap owns, plugging attention spans, one thrust fund at a time. I whine for scripts, like a little bitch, suggesting bronze butt plugs were used for less sexual purposes, sealed in elite's nasty leaks. A dildo is a tool like any other, plus owes its existence to other things. In a recent survey, 5% of you, plus I, will fuck a vacuum cleaner, a more popular alternative to a high-priced, high-end sex doll, which only 2% have used. With a vacuum, you plus I paid back debts by sucking power. A vacuum like a sex doll doesn't say, I love you either, but it makes its presence known. Here I be whining a no holds barred attitude to happy insertions, vanquishing mishmash, electric broomstick jaw droppers. Sometimes a dildo brings you plus I closer together, and sometimes it lays gelatinous eggs inside. Play-Doh caves. Oh my, a dildo is a tool like any other, plus it owes its existence to other things. If a hammer needs nails plus wood, plus a vacuum needs mish plus mash, plus a bronze object needs a corpse's nasty leaks, a dildo needs you plus I to delight upon, plus scream for schemes. sway with post-dildo. Okay. I participate in a series of tasks with a selected partner that I keep swapping back plus forth till I meet a love of a life. Here I am with a selected partner swaying insouciantly, sexually swaying to illegitimate termite raves, too busy working to shut up butt muscles, caress heels of sweaty sneakers. I want to remember the sway now plus forever, bottled up, extinct leather grime. Sway now, not tomorrow, nor a second. From now, but now. This sway never fixed. In vain to regret an ability to sway objects, let alone sway body, plus a selected partner's body. Sway strategies for dealing with comrades, lovers, enemies, patrons, colleagues, bosses, plus mirrors. Sway swan songs of pernicious anti-feminism plus white bourgeois feminism. Though it may hurt to sway away from an apex of genius, depression will still be there, observing the sway, but never commenting. Observation, however, can sway a kind of commentary with correctly raised brow, life and chance, abhorrent biological details revealing public privacy. Purple gush is squidgy to touch when both public plus private. I want a selected partner's purple gush, sell it on a dark web while mildly pressing all revelatory buttons. Sometimes a new word merely replaces an old word. Sometimes this replacement changes everything. Any word, like a theory, requires all types of relations to activate all kinds of swaying. Wobbly fanny matches a bossy neck. Do not sway near eye, sway near eye. Do not fondle, I fondle I. Do not ask for permission, ask for permission. Do not assume, assume. Do not defer, defer. Slipping back canned cream corn on a hot Monday morning introduces a particular boundary or refrain of what disgusts some delights others. A selected partner worries, I have been hurt by words. Now, there are no more left to sense. Words, they cannot hurt me. Only when swaying does anything hurt. I know certain berries are poisonous. Cotton mustard, holly, juniper, pokeweed, you American bittersweet. When mouth spits them out reflexively, I taste them anyway, because I'm not a picky eater. And I'm going to end on a section called Alternative Subtitles for Post-Dildo. I'm thinking of a way to enter into, this is the way I enter into Anna's work. And I also really liked how Massy Arts framed both of our books as a dissertation. And those of you who know me well enough know that I love to muck around with dissertation subtitles. I like to just pull out all make them as weird as possible. Let's just put it that way. So these are alternative subtitles for post-dildo. Healthy communication, mutual masturbation plus living alone. Phallocentric disorder, dependable equipment plus non-reproductive fantasies. Hysterical crisis, ergonomics in a workplace plus who doesn't struggle with self-preservation? Casual Craigslist, high-functioning FetLife plus DTF Tinder. Lovemaking, plagiarizing plus private parts. A rebirthing tool, a substitute plus an ovipositor's guide to liberation. Progressive stigmata, savior complexes plus hubris sexuality. Hubris sexuality, I should say, is a Dorothy Lusk coinage. Erotic violence, intimate social relations in a service of revolution plus a very concept of togetherness. An individual's libidinal function, go fuck me fundraisers plus Fosta Sesta packaged as an ultimate pimp. personal failures, canned neoliberal dicta, plus other synonyms for power. Lapping up domination, puking up submission, plus a moment you realize you can have both. Necropolitics, death phobia, plus trauma porn. On a plurality of wholes, a renunciation of hierarchies, plus erotic violins get you plus I in a mood for making fuck. Head orgasms, mouth anuses, plus everything can be a dildo if you're brave enough. An ability to die better, eros as exquisite excess, plus how shall you fuck without causing harm? How I got a government grant, plus spent my summer fucking garbage, insulfating ketamine, plus writing a Netflix special on psychodildos. How to be Danielle, how to be Madeleine LaFrance, how to be acted upon, plus how to cradle a dildo like a Q-tip. Cock time, passionate timelessness, plus auto theory. On finding hysterics everywhere, nowhere, plus elsewhere. A DSM-5's favorite aesthetic category, anti-establishment plus conservative timing, plus mass producing this little circus for our masses. Gender abolition, a land of men's rights, plus a well-exercised brain. Rape, consensual non-consent, plus other communication requirements. Waiting for a perfect panna cotta to platform. Pelt plus push off. Locker room talk excuses, locker room talk fantasies, plus a butter knife through their hearts or just above to watch them squill. Just something I wrote in a diary when I was 9. Learning you were born 12 hours later. Learning to masturbate to dummy porn. Plus learning endless good vibrations. Making you an assailant, making I a guiltless pleasure, making a woman's fantasy on bended pens. No, yes, plus maybe. Enthusiastic yes, euthanize no, plus murdering old safe words. Cis male genius, male chimps as natural aggressors, plus following a yellow stream to an apex of our production. On Catherine Deneuve going too far. Witch cunt friendly, plus when hunger knows no reason. French seduction theory. A new Puritanism, clumsy flirting, plus please expose this little piggy all the way home. Promise and promiscuity, more sex equals less conflict, plus a bonobo shit smeared handshake smells mighty fine. In a masso soup, disobedient muses, plus an ongoing history of revolt. Fuck without pessimism, scripted debate, plus break a fool. Octopus observations, tentacle rasa, plus free of its tendrils and climbs. Creative intensities, managed wants, plus 24/7 masturbatory availability. What it means to love you, politically, politely, plus potentially. A prefix, a subject, plus new relations for beginning times. It's a structural problem, it's good intentions, plus it's over it. It's a structural process, it's a Venn diagram, plus it's a family resemblance. A word uphold, a word reproduce, plus all other words that never left. It is worth it to live now, to negate organs, plus to skin sack manifestations. An inner heat, yearning for nothing more, plus some big kind of BDE that shrivels orange plumos. To impose a breakup, to do it all over again, plus an amorous rupture requires fucks. Sexual education, prepubescent curriculum, plus learning where adults come from. Let's get on an escalator, baby. Let us take a stairs, honey, plus let us see you pee, sweet thing. refusing to be legally bonded, refusing to reproduce, plus refusing to like an identity to a sexual position, working towards nihilism, working towards abortion, plus working towards consensual birth plans. Sex is the refuge of the mindless, deep-throating a patriarchy, plus flexible horizontalities. Raving sex maniacs, such a nice, good girl boy, which is also something I used to refer to myself as and still do when I was a kid, still a kid. Plus Valerie Solanas shot a Karen. Everything is political, everything is relational, plus everything is wanting more. Erotic hysteria, erotic terror, plus erotic deck chairs. Diets, drunks, plus cheat years. It's a structural problem, it's an analytical problem, plus it's a relational problem.
Thanks, Danielle. And yeah, thank you again to Massy Arts for hosting us tonight. The work they did to promote the event. And this is a great day because I met Anna Moschovakis. Anna works with poetry and prose as a writer, editor, translator, publisher, teacher, and designer. Her books include the novels Participation and Eleanor, or The Rejection of the Progress of Love, and poetry books They and We Will Get Into Trouble for This, and You and Three Others Are Approaching a Lake. Her long poem in process, Preliminary Notes on Risk, was excerpted in a chaplet from Belladonna and in Folder magazine online. She's translated David Diop, Annie Ernaux, Marcel Savageau, Albert Cosseri, Robert Bresson, and others, and is at work on a collaborative translation with the author of Mireille Kebede's Evolutionary Poems. She is a student of plants and herbalism, a member of Ugly Duckling Press, which rocks. I mean, let's face it, it's amazing press. And of Bushel Collective, an experimental mixed-use storefront space in Delby, New York, near where she lives. Please welcome Anna Moschovakis.
So much. Sorry for that long bio. I'm getting to that stage where I might need reading glasses, but I'm going to try not to because they're somewhere deep in that bag. It's so great to be here. Danielle, I love your project so much, and it was so wonderful to hear you read, and it made me not nervous for like a whole however long that was. And now I'm nervous again. But huge thanks to Massy Arts for all of the effort put into this event, and for hosting us, and for editing also the interview, which Danielle and I spent a few funny and fun days going back and forth on these amazing questions, trying not to second guess ourselves, I think, too much. I actually wanted to, well, first of all, I mean, I have, where to start? I'm going to read this little bit from the interview about, and thank you, Kate. Thank you so much. It's so great to meet you too. And I appreciate your hosting so much. I want to read this tiny bit from the interview. I'd been following #postdildo without understanding what it was exactly, though I guess I knew it was partly a reading group that I wished I could join, but it was also more diffuse, a kind of companion utterance that would sidle into my felt vision repeatedly, a recognition. I remember having this feeling of it as hot comfort, a fellow traveler, a thought that has no beginning and no end, but it is still pointing somewhere or pointing away from somewhere. And that is the only kind of positioning that I am able easily to adopt, pointing away, not standing in. So when I read this from the very beginning of the book, you plus I must fashion new fantasies, well, I'm gonna give it to you. I immediately felt, I'll be the you to this I and the ya as well. I just really feel so close to your work, and I think this book is feels very different from the language in Postoldo, but so many of the like kind of subterranean conversations I think are connecting. And as you were reading, I was thinking how so there's 2 reading groups in participation, and they're kind of like the prequel to this reading group that I fantasize I could have been part of, in the sense that, but one of them, I mean, they both sort of like they're not really based, they're not based exactly in actual reading groups, but they sort of are inspired by them. And one of them was in this small town that I live in, and where there isn't as developed a community having these conversations openly. So the word, as I was listening, I thought I was part of a remedial reading group, which I mean remedial in all the ways, but you know, it was sort of in this community space, we kind of put flyers up and we're like, let's read that communist research cluster you know, anthology called Revolutionary Feminisms, which stops in 1988. So it was a lot of people coming together reading stuff that most people had read some of it, but no one had read all of it, and having conversations across a lot of difference and things. So yeah, anyway, I just was thinking about how there's this like, yeah, like this sort of prequel feeling came to me. Also, we need to talk about Heidegger and tools. Because I always think of the second half of that, which is the breakdown part of it. I wrote poetry and write poetry and feel much more comfortable reading poetry, so I always have to trick myself into figuring out how to read fiction. So I think what I'm going to do, or what I am going to do, because it's too late to change it, is read this kind of, find it in here, partly from my phone, partly from the book. This is going to be really fun. I'll probably get a little lost, but that's okay. And there we go. Yeah, so when I'm reading from my phone, it's not from the book. When I'm reading from the book, it's from the book, but I might get a little confused. And yeah, I did this. It's kind of trying to give a sense of what happens in this thing without being like, here's what you have to know. It's chapter 3. The last time I read this, I had a really bad migraine, so I'm hoping it will be less painful, at least for me. Okay. So I'm also out of beverage.
Do you want a beverage? Do you want?
I don't, you know, if I have a minute to get some beverage. Red is good, just in case. Yeah. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, events, and incidents are the products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Or this is a work of fiction. It has the right to remain silent. Anything it does say can and will be used. Anti. Without the beginning of the story, it's enough to know that there is a drafty corner apartment, an all-night bodega out the window, a playground across from the bodega, quiet at night. There is an abundance of emotion, enough years, enough fucks and near fucks and pseudo fucks, enough expectations unanswered because unheard or unsaid, And it is that abundance that is known, a partial knowing, as excess is always, paradoxically, partial. Without the beginning of this story, it is insufficient, but still necessary to have a picture of the surround. Not only the bodega and the playground, but the news reports filtering up from the apartment below. The news reports appearing at the top right of the screen, a stack of small explosions, almost registering, then compulsively swiped away. There is a stack of books on a coffee table, for example, an archive of future attention, or else a morgue. The news reports. The Guerrière is a book I possess but do not own. It was handed to me by a friend in a bookshop, Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas, or Florence. You'll read it, said the friend, and then return it to me. You have 1 year, after which the deal is off, without specifying the other half of the deal. I begin it on a subway and again on a plane and again on a ferry. It begins the same each time. And each time I remember to add it to the syllabus for anti-love. Then I forget, set it aside, pick it up again on a train. It begins the same. On the cover, a topless warrior, Medusa-like, swampy grays and greens. Not topless. The warrior's breasts protrude like weapons, as if sharpened on stone. The clock is ticking, swipe it from the screen. Say the Guerrière, golden spaces, lacunae. The green deserts are seen. They dream and speak of them. One of the members of Anti-Love is a psychoanalyst, a fact rarely mentioned in our meetings, though the language of this fact, safe emergency, edges in. The psychoanalyst is from Buenos Aires, where an hour of therapy can cost the same as a burger. As a result, a large portion of the population is in treatment. We absorb such unverifiable facts from conversation, and they become a part of us. They become us. Without the beginning, it is also necessary to have a picture of the second surround, some 150 miles away. A table in a room that is open to the public, dirty floor, a radiator that leaks, a village view out the window, gas station, neon lights, small mountain just behind. Or this is a work of fiction. Some of the places and situations are based, to some degree, on places that exist and events that have occurred. The characters populating these places and situations are made up. How are we to know who started things? At its peak, there were 10 of us in Anti-Love. We'd sit around the improvised wooden table, peer at one another over mugs of coffee or beer. The idea for the group came from me, I've been told, though I remember it as always having been there, not always in the strict sense. It appeared when I needed it, an acquired taste. Tonight, I met a man who was beautiful and tall, who wore capitalism like a well-fitting suit. Anti-Love recognized him, shone a light, for example. Love was different. You wonder if I have a story to tell. I was invited to love the way salt is invited to the early winter road. I was invited and I said, yes. I said, send me the syllabus. I said, I am only partially fluent in your language. I was told I was welcome nonetheless. Meanwhile, the neighbors were setting each other on fire. California was also burning, actually burning. The neighbors aflame sat on their stoops, extracting the burrowed tip of love from one another's skin. It's everywhere in the news reports. Swipe, swipe. You don't have to believe me, but you can. The news reports. A Dialogue on Love is a book I ordered used from the internet after reading about a different book by the same author and a book by a different author whom I didn't know personally, but who struck me as kindred at the time. In a dialogue, which tells the story of a love theorist and her experience with psychoanalysis, which includes what appear to be intact quotations from the analyst's notebook written in real time, a formal strategy announces itself on the first page and continues to the end. Small poems, not always, but often approximations of haiku, interrupt the flow of the prose, as if not to let us get too comfortable in the flow of the prose, in the story of the therapeutic, therefore intimate, relationship developing between the analyst and the analysand, each of whom reveals themselves from the beginning of the book, which may not be the beginning of the story, to possess the emotional receptors required for the necessary bond to quickly, deeply form. Still, it is not until page 39 that the interruption admits, in so many words, I can't kick this door open, there isn't hope. Love isn't defunct exactly. It's been reduced to a virtual form of itself, flesh into type, an assembly turned list. I enter it when I enter it through a screen. Don't be fooled by the present tense, the future tense when they occur, which they will. This is a story about the past. It's already over. When I say that the story is over, I mean that a merger has happened, which is not to say an acquisition. This is the story of two groups. I am also insisting on the safety of storytelling to protect myself and you from a certain pain. Story is a safe emergency. A week before submitting my revised acknowledgements, the last chance for changes or additions before the book gets sent to print, I panicked. I always panic before publication, often for months and always for some version of the same reason. I'm afraid of the response to whatever it is I'm publishing. I'm not afraid that the work will be judged to be flawed. The work is flawed. I am afraid that I, as a person, will be judged wrong, evil, worth eliminating as a result of what I've written. Facts. I can't know what you believe. I can offer you parable after parable, tale after tale. I can tell you the one about Horace and Anemone, who came together over a shared sense of the word expectation. Anemone wanted things from Horace, a lack of friction mostly, but also small noises, an elbow extended into its vulnerability. Horace wanted everything to be decided, elbow in the ribs, far in. One day in the vestibule of one of their apartments, Horace had a change of opinion, which is not the same as a change of heart. The story ends there with Horace leaking predictable tears, Anemone predictably backing out the door. There is a theory of the psyche that claims life narratives are necessary to the formation of a coherent, subjective self. This theory has always terrified me. Maybe I'm afraid of stories or of selves. What can be told without inciting this terror? What kinds of stories, what narratives, invented or not? Or are these the questions I'm training myself not to ask? As would be expected from someone who suffers from more than the usual allotment of chronic shame, I'm afraid that I will be revealed to be the horrible, evil, worthless person that I secretly know deep down I am. At the same time, and paradoxically, this fear is a fear of being misunderstood. Pause to allow for the inner judge's heart. Who do you think you are, claiming that you have a special or extra relation to shame, chronic or not? Shame on you for pretending to know. Shame on you for thinking you have something to share. And pause. Notice how the words shame and share differ only by one letter. And that, as it happens, this difference spells Mr. A syllabus. The last time Auntie Love met, we were down to 3. It was brutally cold. The streets were ice. The 3 of us sat around the big rectangular table, frequently rising to put the kettle back on or to extract a beer from the fridge. The reading, which was from 1980, was about the politics of consensual sadomasochism and consciously anti-patriarchal love. Around our table, imbalances of experience were revealed, then modulated. I said, according to my friends, and theoretically, I said, don't you think that expulsion of the natural from the erotic is the very definition of freedom? My face grew worn, and embarrassment grew less to an act of disclosure than to the desire to explain. Work. This month, while work has stopped through no fault of my own, while I need to conserve what little funds I have, while I have more time than money, I will try to catch up. I will follow the syllabus of love. I like to follow, but the syllabus has so many holes. In the beginning, I won't try to plug them. I can't make promises for the future, this being one of my failings, both in and out of love. When I say work has stopped, I mean 1/3 of my work has stopped. I have 3 jobs in 2 places, connected by a train. I'm using the word place where before I used surround, though now neither term feels right. In one place, I work part-time in a cafe bar that serves coffee, pie, and cheap wine and crafts. I like the job because the cafe bar is slow and I can read. So slow, I wonder how the owner, whom I never see, covers the bills. I wonder if, after paying me and the other part-time worker, he breaks even. I've done the math, and the money I earn at the cafe bar just covers the expense of commuting to the other place, Surround, to fulfill the obligations of my other 2 jobs, the expense of the train, some food and drink, and rent for the timeshare room in a corner apartment with the bodega/playground view. The job at the cafe bar helps me break even. I could just call the 2 places the village and the city, since that's what they technically are. My second job is different. My second job is as a mediator in training. When I get a call, I travel south to the city to assist my mentor with cases. I can't tell you about the cases. They're covered by a confidentiality agreement I signed when I began my training, and which I sign again in front of each new set of clients. What I can tell you is that, to my mind, the work with my mentor is worth the hours I put in at the cafe bar to support my commute. For one thing, the work is interesting. For another, it is the closest I have come to investing in my future. Even at the apprentice stage, it pays the most of my 3 jobs. But in the place where I am most often, in the village, where my life is manageable and where I work at the cafe bar, it's hard to come by employment as a mediator. Though sometimes working at the cafe bar feels like supplemental training. My third job, the one at which I met the capitalist, is a holdover from my former line of work. It's a waged job like the cafe bar, but in the information sector rather than the service sector. I don't like my third job. I have arguments with its purpose. I would like, once my current obligations to the capitalist are complete, to cut back to just the 2 jobs. I have only 1 mouth to feed after all. Unfortunately, the work that has stopped through no fault of my own is not the third job, the one I argue with and want to leave behind. My mentor has vanished and isn't returning my calls. Now I have 2 jobs, but they aren't the 2 jobs I want. Still, a hole in my schedule has created the opening necessary to catch up with love. What was making me panic in particular with this round of publication dread was the fact that I knew some of the settings and occurrences that appear in my novel were based recognizably on places that exist and that are recognizable parts of my life. For instance, the shared room I stay at when I'm commuting to one of my jobs in Brooklyn, the collective space I participate in where I live, the train I take between these places, my neighborhood bookstore, an old job site, and on and on and on. But at the same time, the characters in the novel weren't based on the people who inhabit these spaces in life. For example, there are reading groups in the book. They read some of the same texts, though not all, that actual reading groups I participated in have read together and discussed. But the characters in the reading groups in my book have nothing to do with the people in the actual groups. I don't know where they came from, the characters, but they came from somewhere else. They emerged from the needs of the scene, as if they'd been waiting there, ready to join in the action, to play their role. Another syllabus. The style of mediation have been learning, depends on the ability of the mediator to draw out unspoken needs from each party, to go beyond the surface narrative, the conflict, to find out what the right brain knows. The phrase used in the manual is the story beneath the story. You could say the mediator shares some traits with the therapist. According to the Argentine analyst, therapeutic treatment depends on love being present. If not mutual, then at least unidirectional from therapist to client. This love, the analyst admits, can take effort and isn't always possible to achieve. Learning to draw out the stories beneath the stories told by my mentor's clients takes effort, especially when a reaction of confusion or defensiveness is sparked within me. When confusion or defensiveness becomes apparent in my body, my task is to reorient toward the client's story while taking note of the subject or dynamic that provoked me, on which I clearly still have work to do. It's only now that I'm not actively being called to the field of mediation that I'm most actively reflecting on that field, viewing it with the peculiar intimate distance of the cartographer and viewing that cartographic distance with the suspicion of the skeptic. I don't know if attention to this task of self-aware reorientation, if the labor it requires, falls under the category of agape. It may be just as important to eros and philia, or it may belong to a category of love still unnamed, or one named somewhere I have yet to encounter. This category must be represented in love's syllabus by its holes. I did that horrible thing where I didn't look at the time, so I'm getting I think when I had the migraine, I read never happens to me. You're all so focused. No, I mean, I never like lose my place in another reading. Sorry. Okay. Go for a few more minutes. Here we are. Last night in a contemplative mood or mode, I harvested one of the mushrooms from the bin and bit off the cap. I was hoping to find a shortcut to discovering what it is I want to tell you about my questions and my lists about the unsecured corporate wireframe and the terribly tender flesh. I lay down and had a very long sentence put under then overlay. To the window where no one trees had a bright things, darling, farthing, far away, green, though up close, were also 1,000 smaller that looked the same size. And the dog, did you know there was a dog, not a real, was a waggy thing. And then it became all clear, because this was mild, you see, only a small bite. And now it's morning and I'm clever and it's time to tell you who I am or who I'm not, myself. Is that enough? 10 days ago at a summer fair, fried dough, bouncy castle, corn dogs, and crystals and soap, I ran into one of the members of Anti-Love. We are on hiatus for the summer. Actually, we have finished the collection of essays on our syllabus, and we've been so careful about power sharing that everyone is reluctant to weigh in on what to read next. There was a tentative offering about prisons, one about communes, one about gray water and composting toilets with several hands-on workdays figured in. Were we finished with theory? We pinned black discs to our shirts, placeholders for the next protest. Some of us had read fragments of an anarchist anthropology and been moved by its argument for localized practice for methods named after processes themselves rather than after the men who'd thought them up. Or what would it mean not to be finished with theory? We had found our members, including the one I saw at the fair and hugged through sweat and smiles, by stapling a flyer to a telephone pole. The we is royal. The flyer said, "Are you tired of invention, tired of history? Do you feel that you're all out of fight? Come sit and read angry things with other angry people. Maybe it will feel like love. No fascists, beer, coffee, free." Sometimes people ask me about autofiction, and I think, but isn't all fiction autofiction? Sometimes people ask me about auto theory, and I think, isn't all poetry auto theory? A friend wrote that a story is not plot or scene, but a thought. Is a novel a longer thought, or does its extension turn it into some other kind of thing? A question, a field, a pitch, or a pursuit? These notes have been swimming in my head for years, like a question, a field, a pitch, a pursuit. Maybe they will become a novel too. At this point, this text deteriorates into a sequence of notations for future writing sessions. Note, list all the similarities between your two novels, which you didn't realize were there until it was too late. Two narrators, one first person and one third. Lists of book titles, stacks of books, paragraphs copied from books, bonfires, drugs, dreams. The naming of a minor character for a science fiction author who goes by a different name in life from their professional name. Watching films with others, gender instability, baseline communism, anti-capitalist desire, the sudden arrival of a chapbook by one of my friends into the world of the book. Trains, sex, lust, doubt, the news, the news, the news. Intimate address to the reader. Is this true? The anxious sharing of some kind of anxious writing about the anxiety of publication. Dot, 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 dot. I'm gonna stop.